Hi, I'm Debbie and welcome to Book and Bujo, where I talk about all things books, bullet journals, and stationery. Thank you so much for joining me today as I wrap up all of the readathons that I participated in March. So I did participate in 3 readathons in March. I participated in Realm-A-Thon with covers with Cassidy, Spring into Reading-Athon with Completely Melanie, and the Irish Readathon with Words of Clover and Leanne Rose. I will leave all of their channels linked down below in case you want to check them out and participate in any of the future readathons that they have. Let's start with Realm-A-Thon with covers with Cassidy. For Realm-A-Thon, I was on Team Time, and our hosts were Becca in the Books and Tori Between Pages. And we did okay. We came in third, but that's okay. So I did have 22 books that I read for Realm-A-Thon. Unfortunately, most of the books I read, the most points I could get were negative points. So that was negative points towards another team instead of positive points for our team, which is fine. That works, but it was harder to find books that gave us more points as opposed to taking away points from other teams. So I did end up with a total of 341 positive points for my team and 353 negative points for my team. This did not include any bonus books that I read during the readathon sprints over the one weekend. And it also does not include the points that I got for page counts. So like I read an 881 page book and that gave us an extra 40 points for that. But I did read some that were under 200 pages, which gave us no extra points. So I did earn some more points that way as well. Next up was Spring into Reading, and I did fairly well. I, of course, always want to do the blackout, and I didn't quite make it. I missed 2 books. Not too bad. I didn't think I was actually going to get this one, and I ended up with a bonus book, and I ended up getting that spot, which I forgot to talk about in my March wrap-up, so I'll have to tell you a little bit about it in this one. So the one book I missed was Rewind, a past season-a-thon group book or author. I didn't find one of those. And then a Spring Break, a beach setting book. I had a couple books where they did go to the beach, but it was like this much of the book. So I didn't feel like I could count it for that. But I did get a bingo this way, and this way. And I got one this way, and this way, and this way. And I got a diagonal one here, and I also got the corners. So that's kind of fun. I did pretty good. And I did get the group book as well, which was Shadow of the Fox, which I also didn't talk about in my March wrap-up, but that one was really good. I gave it 4 stars. Originally, I gave it 4.5 stars, but after sitting with it for a little while, I knocked it down to just a solid 4-star. It was good, but I think I wanted just a little bit more out of it. And in Shadow of the Fox, the great Kami dragon was summoned 1,000 years ago and granted a single wish. But it was a terrible wish that plunged the land into darkness and chaos. So the hope is that it will never happen again. The scroll that had the information on how to summon this dragon was torn into pieces, and the pieces were all taken and stored in different places so they could never be put back together again. Shadow of the Fox is filled with Japanese folklore and focuses on a kind of a misfit team of a half kitsune, which is a demon fox shifter, a demon slaying shinobi, which is like a ninja, and a ronin, which is a disgraced samurai, as well as a few other fun characters. At first glance, it seems like this mismatched team is not really going to be a good thing. It's just not going to work. But they are determined. The writing style of this book is super easy to read. It's uncomplicated. The characters and the plot are both pretty interesting, and I think the atmosphere is really good and has some decent world building in it. I would definitely recommend this book to anyone who loves folklore or retellings. So we were able to double up on books and prompts, so you could read one book for multiple prompts, so I did that. And some of the books I read were The Girl in the Tower by Catherine Arden, Heart of a Valkyrie by Melanie Karsak, The Heart Principle, that was one that I didn't talk about yet, and that is by Roan Parrish, and I loved that book. That was my 4th 5-star read for the month. And the main character, or female in this story, is autistic, and she has a boyfriend. She plays the violin professionally, and she has gotten a little bit of fame from a YouTube video of her doing a solo at one of her concerts, and it was kind of that instant fame, and she's not quite sure how to handle that. She's not liking that too much. And then her boyfriend tells her that he wants to have a more open relationship. So he doesn't really want to break up, but he wants to date other people at the same time in order to make sure that she's the one. Not sure how I feel about that either. And this is where the story kind of starts. And so he goes out and does his thing, and she decides, you know what, why not? She signs up on a dating app, and there we go. They're just looking for a one-night stand, because if he's gonna do it, I might as well do it. Our other main character, he is a cancer survivor, and he has been kind of keeping to himself. He was always kind of that more outgoing party guy, you know, different girl all the time, bunch of dating apps. And his cousin, who is also his best friend and his business partner, tells him he needs to get back out there, get back on the horse and start dating again. So he, just to appease his cousin, he jumps on to some of his former dating sites, and this is where the two of them meet. This story was just so well done, and I loved every minute of it from start to finish. This is my first Rome Parish book, I believe, and I will definitely be reading more. I also used A Flip by David Estes in here, Mother of Learning, Name of All Things, Rachel Incident, Night Watch, the Rachel Incident, that one's coming up. Daughter of the Deep. We do have a self-care day that we had to do, and I used my gua sha and jade roller for that. March I used in here. Drink your favorite beverage. That one is a ginger beer. Love ginger beer. It's basically a ginger ale type of thing. Dare to Believe and Agnes Grey, Winter House Mysteries. So those are some of the books that I was able to use to complete this readathon. Lastly, I had the Irish Readathon, and this is the second year I will have taken part in the Irish Readathon, and I had so much fun last year. I wanted to make sure I did it again. I was glad they continued with it. This is actually their 7th year of doing the Readathon. I wish I had found out about it a little sooner, but it was so much fun. Okay, the group book was The Rachel Incident by Carolyn O'Donoghue, and I do have to say, if I had seen the original cover of this book, or the UK cover, I probably wouldn't have been interested in reading it, but I actually did enjoy the US cover. It's more of a drawing of a person, as opposed to, I'm not a big fan of like real people on the cover of books unless it's like a memoir or biography. I prefer more just drawings of them, or some other fantastical kind of thing, more like this, or that type of a drawing of a person. And the original cover had actual people on the cover, and I was like, eh. But the cover that I had from my library, which is this one here, is one that I actually really liked the cover of, which really has not much to do with the book itself. But there we go, off my tangent now. Done with that rabbit hole. I really enjoyed this book. So The Rachel Incident is about the life of a young woman who is in college or at uni, and she wants to become a writer. And so she's taking English classes, and she works at a bookstore. One day they hire a kind of a temp person named James. So it's Rachel and James. And James and Rachel somehow just hit it off mostly right off the bat, and they become best friends. They decide to get an apartment together, and they just are all up to a whole bunch of shenanigans that college students get up to. A little too much drinking, a little too much partying, and maybe not enough saving and learning. But their friendship deepens, and one day Rachel realizes that one of her professors wrote a book, and they decide to throw like an open house book signing party at the bookstore that she works at. And so she sets this all up, and of course she has a crush on her professor because he is very attractive. And James is like, oh, we can use this to set it up so that maybe you can get him alone, maybe get him into the closet and maybe have something happen. Well, they have this book signing, and that's not quite the way it goes, at least not for her. And the story just continues. So the story is pretty much about James and Rachel and the best friends that they are, and how their lives intertwine and intermix, and how they grow together, apart, and how their friendship survives tough times, good times, up until they are now adults, and it's just a beautiful coming of age story. And then the first prompt for the readathon was a book with a green cover, and there was a couple books I was going to read for this, but they weren't Irish books and they weren't by Irish authors. Searched around to find something that I could squeeze in towards the end of the month, and that was Irish Wolfhounds by Alan Morey, and this one's a children's book. It's super short, it's only 24 pages long, and it was nice. It's a great introduction to wolfhounds as a breed and what you might want to look out for if you're interested in having them as a pet, and the care and love of this animal. Then I needed to read an Irish children's book, which of course Irish Wolfhound could have worked, but I already had read a book for this prompt, so I didn't need that one. And you can't double up. And this could be children's, middle grade, or YA, so anything that's geared towards under the age of 18, which was helpful. And I did find a middle grade book that I've been looking at for quite a while, and that was Artemis Fowl, which is the first book in the series by Ian Colfer. And I did enjoy this one. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad I read it. And this one has dwarves and elves and fairies and humans, and Artemis is I believe 12-year-old, and he has discovered this book that has told him about fairies and all of the other trolls and other creatures that live in the same world, and somehow he has deciphered this book. He's a very intelligent young man. His father is missing, his mother is very sick and is basically in a coma now, and he's trying to find a way to help her, but maybe not in the best way he could have. So he kidnaps a fairy to help him to make money so that he can help his mom. The next prompt was related to 7, so since this was the 7th year of the readathon, they wanted to have the number 7 somewhere, so you could read a book that had like 270 pages or 705 pages or 307 pages. You could read a book that was published in 1997 or 1792, or have a 7 in there somewhere, or there's a 7 in the title or something like that. And I found Grace O'Malley, the Pirate Queen of Ireland, and this had 73 pages in it. And it was really good. So this is by History Nerds, and it is basically the history of Grace O'Malley. I wish there would have been a little bit more about her as a pirate. It basically takes you from the point where she kind of becomes a pirate all the way up through the rest of her life. So she gets to meet the Queen of England, and she convinces the Queen of England to come into an agreement with her. She's a fierce, strong woman. She has children, and they are all raised, basically at sea, and she's a warrior, she's a businesswoman, she's super smart, she was very strong, and definitely a leader and a warrior in her time period. I kind of want to know a little bit more and read a little bit more up on her. Thoroughly enjoyed it. The fourth prompt was related to a cover prompt, so you had to have something on the cover: an animal, food, house, books, some type of object or fantasy element. And I chose Ireland by Wendy McElroy, and this one has a map of Ireland on the cover, and it was very interesting. So last year for the readathon, I read a book, The Open Secret, and this had some history of a certain time period of the open door movement in Ireland. And this book kind of expanded on that a little bit. It was a little bit broader because it covered a lot more years than that book did. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. So the first half of the audiobook was almost like a news story, like you were watching Dateline or 60 Minutes or something like that. The last half was more like you were in a lecture from a, in college, which it was a little more dry and a little slower at that point, but it was still had such good information. It was really interesting, and it covered, I want to say, from the 1920s through the 1970s, somewhere in there, covering politics and war and famine and the way people are treated during those times, and oppressive governments, and just wanting freedom. It was really good. I would definitely recommend that one. Then the last prompt was read an Irish book in your favorite genre. So my favorite genre, of course, is fantasy, and I had forgotten because this author doesn't live in Ireland anymore. He lives in New Zealand, but he is Irish, and that is Ryan Cahill. So I read Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill, so this was a reread. So in Of Blood and Fire, we follow Cahill and his friends Dan and Rist, and the great little village that they have grown up in. They are at that age where they have to kind of prove themselves, the proving, and they have to go as a team of 3. They go out into the forest, and whichever team brings back the biggest kill, so like a wolf or a bear or a rabbit or whatever they find, at the end of the weekend, they're kind of the winners, and they get special privileges and recognition for that. And all of the teams that come back with something, they have then proven themselves and are now adults. While they're out in the forest, they find something unexpected, and their lives will be forever changed. 4.5 stars. Now, some people do say this one is very tropey, so of course it's a chosen one trope. We have elves and giants and uruks and a whole bunch of really fun fantastical creatures. There's a wolf pine, and it's a really fun book, and it's meant to be somewhat tropey and similar to the writing styles of some other fantasy books that you like. Wheel of Time, Lord of the Rings, a bunch of those, Aragon, but it doesn't follow those stories. This is just to set you up and get you comfortable in the world until you get to the next books, which then blow your mind. So if you liked this one but wasn't in love with it, you gotta read the second book, and then you'll know why this is one of everyone's favorite series. First book I really enjoyed because I do love all of those series and I do love all those tropes. And it's such a fun, easy to read, easygoing story. And if you want to see where I got this beautiful edition, I will leave my unboxing of both the book and the slipcase that I got to go with it in the cards above and down in the description box below. Thank you so much for joining me as I wrapped up the readathons that I participated in March. And I would love to know, did you participate in any of these readathons? And if you did, which ones were they? Let me know down in the comments below. If you made it this far in the video, leave an emoji for your favorite of the 3 readathons. Have maybe a shamrock for the Irish Readathon or a green heart. You could leave a timepiece of some kind, so either an hourglass or a watch or a clock for team time for Realm-A-THon, or something spring for the Spring into Reading-Athon. Maybe a bunny or some flowers or maybe some fluffy clouds. And please like, comment, and subscribe if you want it, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any other videos from me. And until next time, keep reading. Bye!